Welcome back to the podcast. Today we are talking about picky eaters. This is our take two, I guess. Our
take two?
Part two. Part two, take one.
Take two, part one.
When we do this for real, we'll be way more professional.
True. That is true. That is true. So picky eaters, which is really hits close to home to me still because well, I feel like
Are you still a picky eater, Josh?
I'm not a picky eater, but my son is a picky eater.
Yeah,
and
Andy, you're not a picky eater.
No, Indy. Yeah, but yeah, and so we literally were dealing with this last night. Just the whole we said, "Do you want an apple?" No. He only wants toast right now. That's our current
today.
Toast.
Tomorrow it'll be.
Yeah. So apple, no. And so my wife goes ahead and makes him an apple anyways. And then after he refuses it, but then he starts eating it, then it's just like more. And then all he wants is apple.
For those 5 minutes.
Exactly. For those 5 minutes.
I think that is like, there's something to that. Like she made him an apple anyway.
Yep.
And she put it in front of him. And then he ate it.
Exactly.
And then he decided it was delicious.
Yes. So
in our parenting manual, we talk about where the brain is for a human being under 18, from birth to 18.
It's slowly.
It's in the emotional center. It's in the back of the brain.
Right.
Does it feel good to have an apple when you feel like toast? No. You want toast because it feels good to have toast. Mm-hmm. But if you live on toast, you die.
Yeah.
It's that simple.
It's accelerated quickly.
Right. But see that's how we think. I mean, if I could have lived on cake, I would have been a happy boy up until death.
Yep.
Up until death.
And that's just the thing. It's up to my parents to be able to regulate my understanding because they get that I like cake, I want cake, and I don't understand how the body works, that it is not the nutritional apple that I really need. And so, we had, I think we talked about this last time, we had the 4 food groups plus the 5th, which was considered dessert.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, dessert was an additive.
And that's the motivation to eat the meal.
Yeah.
And when I would slide the dessert in there and slide the other things off there, they had to make decisions. Mm-hmm. It just can't be my choice because I don't have the brain thinking power at that age to be able to make the best decisions for myself. So, and that's the thing, like Lucas had said, that's now notice how he's eating the apple.
Yeah.
Right. That's my favorite part of the story. He's
right.
Like, no. Oh, wait. Nom, nom, nom.
Yeah. Yeah.
There's that classic, if they're hungry enough.
Right.
And that is a truth that is frequently true.
Yeah.
I have a friend that their kids actually just won't eat. So that's kind of a different problem.
Yeah.
But for many kids.
Well, and that's, so now does that, with the kids that won't eat, does that fall into a medical or a psychological piece? Right. Mm-hmm. There are ways to work with, said places like that. Right. Autism, Asperger's, you still have places to be able to work with that. Like when I had Proctor kids, they weren't going to eat anything if it didn't have, fast food label on it.
Yeah, the McDonald's logo.
Yep. And we talked about that, putting out the things.
Yeah, it is a hard thing because, for example, when my wife made that apple, I've done that before, but then sometimes you just still hit a roadblock. It's not going to eat, not going to eat, not going to eat.
Right.
And then you have
if only he's hungry enough. It's a truth, but it's not 100%.
And then there's been times that, okay, if you're not going to eat that, that's fine. Well, then we're laying in bed and he's not going to sleep and saying hungry, circle cracker. And then I'm having to figure out the kid actually didn't eat. He probably is hungry.
Right.
Do you let him be hungry? There's a lot of those things. So sometimes it's easier just to take the path of least resistance and be like, all right, I'll make you toast.
In the moment.
Right.
In the moment. Well, see, you have to understand where do you get a strong will from? Okay.
Yeah.
Now, myself included, So then it's like, oh, well, could I just be eating a lot of apples? Okay, no, I don't want it. No apples. That's fine.
Yeah.
They're not for you.
Yeah.
They're for me.
Yeah.
Well, he's laying in bed hungry, and you're still munching on an apple.
Yep.
And you're still eating an apple, and he's like hungry, and I'm like, me too.
Yeah.
And it's apples or whatever things you're doing. Circle crackers.
Yeah.
apple, you know, and so there's ways to, because you have to work with the strong will component that you gave the child.
Right.
And in doing so, you have to understand that they can't see because their logical brain fixed big picture or future picture, meaning if they then get to this place where they're not getting the circle crackers, they're thinking, oh my gosh, I may never get circle anything or anything. Okay, I'll try an apple, because they can't think past, if I just would hold out until the point of almost starvation, they might give me the circle crackers. No, it'd be an IV and it wouldn't taste like that. But they can't make that logical shift, you know. And so that's why anything but those circle crackers is a win, especially it's more on the nutritional side.
Right.
And there's ways to be able to do that creatively. And that's why we always come back to, you have to know your child, right? You know.
But we like to throw out ideas. And I mean, and your idea of like, if it is bedtime and the kid's hungry and you genuinely think some calories would be good for him, offer him the thing you want him to eat despite his insistence on whatever crackers.
And you can even widen that range. When I was in a treatment centers working as a staff, the teenagers, so there were mainly middle school to high school, would at between 8 and 9 o'clock is turn off the lights, go to bed. They're opening doors, knocking on doors saying, hungry. And the staff is like, 7:30, you had your snack. You can't be hungry. And
because they had dinner and they had snack.
Yep. And I'm going, you guys forget what it was like to be an adolescent and have the growing going on? You know, and so they're like, well, we can't give them food. We'll be up all night. I'm like, you're already up all night.
But you're up all night now.
Doing holds and restraints. Yeah. So why not give them some food and see if that's the problem?
Yeah.
And particularly, don't feed them Snickers.
Well, and they're like, well, what are we going to give them? I'm like, how about offer a stack of saltines? Because we have like bazillions of them. and they are filling. Or a fruit. And they're like, oh, you just want to give them sugar. They're going to be up all night.
Did you hear what I said?
Right. They're already, and I'm not offering them Snickers. That's a great alternative. It's either banana, orange, apple, or a stack of saltines. Give them a choice. And it was 50-50. And you know what? Within 1 week, there was no restraints and no holds.
That is incredibly powerful outcome to point to. It's like we were having to physically hold down children in a treatment home and we fed them and that stopped.
And it stopped. You know, so
and that's really because like I can envision a circumstance in which there could be children who were saying hungry and trying to manipulate you into something.
And guess
what? That's a possibility.
Yep. Yeah. I had that happen too, because there was like when I was first a staff there, the girl at the table, she turned around and she said, in the nicest, most respectful, honoring way, she said, could I please have a second PB&J? I'm still hungry. And I'm like, man, you got all the words right. And I'm new. And so I'm like, you know what? That is a really great question. Let me check on that. And so I turned to Brent, who was long-term staff, and I said, what do you do with a request like that when someone's still hungry? And he goes, well, what do you think? You know, and so he's putting that back in my thing. And I'm like, well, you had a PB&J, probably can't go there and do another sandwich. And then he walked into the kitchen and he brought back the fruit bowl. And he said, if you're still hungry, these are always your choices. And she said, no, thank you. And turned. So there was, and I was getting kind of that read that this feels manipulative, you know, and she had been there a while, you know, and so, you know, she knew what the options were.
Well, that's absolutely a scenario I go through with my kids in my house.
Yep.
Of like, the words they use is, I want a treat. Okay. And maybe they'll have had a treat that day. Great. You already had one. If you're still hungry, you can have seconds of what we were eating, or I can get you a banana. I mean, that's like very literally applicable to how I operate in my household.
Yeah. I've done the exact same thing.
Right.
And I think there's a lot of value in that because you're operating with people who are thinking emotionally.
Right.
And taste is a huge motivator. If it wasn't,
Oh gosh.
Yeah. Yeah.
our industry here in the West would not have the food billions that it has, and we'll go back to Kraft macaroni and cheese. It tastes the best.
Yeah.
It's horrible for me, but it tastes
It's hard
the
to
best.
overeat on celery. If you're eating
Yes.
celery, it's like,
Yes.
I'm full and I'm gonna stop.
Right.
As opposed to if you're eating Kraft macaroni and cheese, you may put too many
Right.
spoonfuls in your mouth because
Yep.
it tastes good.
Well, and take any kind of salted potato chips.
Sure.
The
Salt is a
makes
kind
sense.
of nom, nom,
Yep.
nom,
Yep,
nom.
and that's science.
Yeah.
That's a science of the pieces. And our kids don't know that. And I don't expect them to know that.
Right.
We're supposed to know that.
Yeah.
We're supposed to be, in that monitoring. Now, sometimes you can get to a place where, how do you know if your kid really doesn't like something? My wife was bringing up last night. She's like, I really didn't like what my mom had to say in this regard. She was like, if I don't like it, you don't have to try it. And she goes, I don't like that anymore. I mean, because that meant I had to try or eat everything she liked. And there are things she liked I didn't like.
Yeah.
But if she didn't like it, then I never got to try it. And she's like, when I was a kid, I didn't care for avocados. But as an adult, I can't get enough of them. Mm-hmm.
Things change.
Things change, and I wish I had more of an avocado taste than what I have. I have a solid guacamole taste, but that stuff turns brown. And that makes it tough for me to keep consuming that part.
Right.
I have to figure that out.
And I
But-
think there's go ahead.
No. Go
I
ahead.
was just going to say, I think there's variations are also a factor. So I always grew up thinking I like fruit, but I don't like any vegetables. And then as an adult, I learned you could saute bell peppers and things like that. And so now I
Right.
love that stuff. And I wonder if I was given some of that sauteed as a kid, I might have been like, oh, I actually like this.
Taste will change throughout life.
Yeah.
The brain is always changing. It just has different ways that it does that. But I would say yes. I mean, I would say, taste buds are so unique and specific to the individual per the individual.
Right.
That doing it just a little way different.
Yeah.
Could really open those doors up, and it's too bad that, somebody didn't kind of stumble across that at that time.
Right.
But now you can put that in your tool bag, for your son as he gets older, and maybe he doesn't like,
Right.
but then, hey, let's try him like this.
You can steam them,
Yeah.
you can boil them, you can saute them,
You can
bake
do
them.
all those kinds of things. I don't care what you do with lima beans, though. They're never going to fit in my taste buds.
Is that your...
Has anyone?
Major.
How many ways have you tried lima beans?
One.
I don't care how many ways you tried them. One.
And here's the one. It went in my mouth. Okay, that's it. It's done after that, And everybody's going to have that piece.
Can you do with lima beans what you do with garbanzo beans? You turn garbanzo beans into hummus. Can you turn lima beans into hummus?
I'll tell you what. I'm going to put that experiment in your hands.
There you go.
And if it works, which you will probably find it works, and if you like it, love to hear about it, but I still am not going to try it.
All right. So at the next staff party, I'm bringing
There you go.
chip dip.
All I heard
I'm
is
not telling you what it is.
never eat anything
Right,
that Lucas
that
brings
Lucas brings.
from this day forward.
Might have lima beans in it.
The funny story.
Food coloring.
Yeah.
And anyway, we're going to figure it.
We went one time to someone's house to have dinner, and they were giving us these weird looks and things as we're having their enchiladas. Okay. And I'm like, what the heck is going on?
Right.
And something tastes a little different in the enchilada.
Yeah.
And then they're like, well, what'd you guys think about that? And it's like, well, it's a little different. And
There's
then
a little something in it.
then they share that it's lamb.
Okay.
Oh.
And it's not and that's not, a lot of meats are not my wife's thing. And, so she was not happy because this is what her dad would do. You just kind of, that was possum. He didn't do that. But, he would kind of do the surprise. This is what it is.
Yeah.
See, you really do like it. And for me, I'm like, man, why would you do that? Why don't you just say we made this with lamb, and go from there? Now, back to lima beans. My parents liked mixed vegetables and lima beans. I don't know.
Liked them.
They liked them.
Not only were they okay with them.
I'm always saying I've never met someone that liked lima beans. I've actually met a couple people now.
Your parents.
I forget they actually liked lima beans.
There are literally and specifically lima bean hummus recipes.
See, I knew you'd find it.
It is very specifically something that is like, I'm not making it up.
No.
It is a real thing.
Well, and this
that actually really looks kind of good.
you know what? I may have just found someone else that likes lima beans once he's done with this.
I don't actually even remember what a lima bean tastes like. They're just not part of my
Yeah, I feel like I don't run
on my
into
menu.
it.
Yeah,
We really need to bring them in now.
Yeah.
Only if they stay at that end of the table. Or we're gonna have like flying lima beans.
So this has been a lifelong aversion.
It's been a lifelong. Well, let me. Okay, so we'd have to take in our family a little bit of whatever was on the table and try it. And we talked about that a little bit last, podcast in this series, and I had tried it and I did not like it and I do not like it and I was not going to have. I mean, it's like oatmeal too. I don't care how much stuff you pour in oatmeal, it still is going to have bad things in my system come back, and you have to know what isn't going to work for you.
Is that kind of like a food intolerance aversion for you? Like it makes you sick?
It made me sick.
Made you sick?
Yes. Yeah. And so I'm just, that's just the way I'm built. That's the way my taste buds are. Everybody has that. My nephew, Dalton, does not like tomatoes. He does not like tomato sauce. He does not like any of that stuff.
Tomato nothing. And
you were not going to be able to change that, which I understood. I'm like, dude, I'm with you. I got lima beans, I totally hear. So I would have to sit at the table and they had determined that I was just being stubborn. Not that I did not like this, but that I was just being stubborn. To their credit, it's not that I had never tried to pull things off to make them think that I didn't like or didn't want certain things.
So this is your parents making an educated guess as to what was happening.
An educated guess.
They were wrong, but they also had a reasonable, it was a reasonable thought.
Yep. I was the kid that you really had to know to be able to read, how's this going? I can't tell you how many times I heard, the boy cried wolf. And we read that story many, many times, and my thinking was, I just didn't do it right. Which is not helping me. And so they would leave the table. I'm still sitting at the table. I don't fault them for any of this. And I would be like, how am I going to be able to get through this? Because lima beans, they make me sick. Cooked peas, I've got that, and it's in the mixed vegetables. They're not believing me. Oh, we have 2 dogs. And so I would call the dogs over. It didn't take much. They'd come over there. I'd be like, they take the mixed vegetables just fine. And then I gave them the lima beans. And I'll never forget, they had the lima beans, and they were like shaking their head. And they were like, what the heck is this? And then, and they downed them. And I'm like, all right, this is going to work.
It's gone.
Yeah. So the next time we had this, I call the dogs over and they don't come. And I'm like, what are you guys doing? You got to save me here. And they're like, And they're like looking, and I had the lima bean, and they're like smelling, and they're like, we're done. And they walked away. I'm like, what am I going to do with this now? Because I'm not eating it. And I'm not going to put it in my pockets. They've been, they were like, they even told me, look, we're going to check your pockets too. Holy crap. All right. And so right behind me, they did know me in some certain ways. Right behind me was one of my mom's prize plants. It was a very healthy, it was very hardy. It was a very wonderful plant. She had spent a lot of time on it. She was very proud of it. I figured, lima beans come from the soil, right? Lima beans can go back into the soil. I started dumping the lima beans into the plant soil.
Nice.
Not really.
Great farming.
Little did I know, there is something about the acidic value of a lima bean that it
pH
kills.
balance.
Yes. So the prize plant began to die.
Uh-oh.
My mom is like, what's going on here? Now, the other part that I forgot to mention in this story is that my dad was a soil scientist and a genius, to which he now had to investigate why the prize plant was dying. Because this is his field. And I'm like, I'm so screwed. Why couldn't the dogs just eat the lima beans? Well, probably it would knock off the pH balance of the dogs too.
Yeah.
And that would have been different.
You do have to have a properly pH balanced dog.
Right. Yeah. And, in all of my studies of lima beans as to what I have been able to do, I have been able to determine that they kill. Therefore, no one, probably not even in hummus, should be having, intake of lima beans. Well, he took samples to his lab.
Wow.
He worked for the Forest Service.
Wow.
So he has all the government equipment of the day to be able to figure this out.
Oh my God.
He was trained at Colorado University, so he's trained at a high level to be a soil scientist. And he comes back and he wants to sit down and talk. And he's like, when did you stop eating the lima beans? Crap. Nice. And he goes, yeah, it's not going to, he goes, really? I mean, do you really want to deny any of this? And I'm like, so you determined that the lima beans kill the plant? And he goes, yes. I'm like, therefore, you would not want your children to eat it because it will have same said results, right? And you won't be able to put me in the test tube. Yeah, he was like, no, it doesn't work like that.
Right, you're not a plant.
I'm not a plant. And therefore, it just, even feigning death didn't quite work. At another, they just left the room and let me continue to feign.
Wow.
I know, right? and he was like, also, I've noticed something different about the dogs. And I'm like, well, they don't like lima beans either. Why doesn't that tell you something? And it wasn't until my grandmother kind of stepped into the thing that they realized, okay, wait, maybe this is not about being stubborn. Mm-hmm. Maybe this is about, because the lima beans didn't make me sick the way that oatmeal did.
Yeah.
That one, they were like, no, good, you're good with that. They just thought it was something I was trying to get through to get to the dessert,
right?
And I'm thinking and doing lots of things on a high level that, I totally get why they went this way. This really is, I screwed myself, but I did learn some very important things about lima beans.
They kill plants.
They kill plants, and at the same time, now I'm going to work with that differently with my kids. When I'm seeing them moving around certain types of foods, I'm going to be a little more investigative, and I'm going to put up, okay, have I ever seen them eat this food before? Okay, this is a new food. Now I'm going to say, hey, what do you think about that? And I want to hear, texture, taste, what's their response to this kind of a food,
right?
And is it just I want circle crackers and that's all I want, or is it like, well, I tried it, because like me with the squash, it's mushy, it tastes weird. They put butter, they put cinnamon.
Have you tried it fried though?
I will never try it again. So no,
Okay.
But you're right. That those are and that was the one thing they didn't quite do. They wanted to add in additives to enhance the tastes that they liked. They didn't think about some of these other ways to try it like that.
Yeah.
And so that was not going to happen for me. And they could because I'm going to be watching my kid out of the corner of my eye. They're going to take, certain bites. And I'm looking for facial and body expressions that, okay, this kid does not like this.
I find it really remarkable how you'll put a plate of food in front of a kid and it's like, some kind of like rice dish.
Yeah.
And it's got like rice and vegetables and chicken and cheese in it. And I'll be eating away and I'll eat the whole thing and I'll look up and like, only the vegetables are left on the plate, on my kid's plate. And I'm like, how you ate around. How, Jeez, that's a lot of like one element of a mixed dish will be the only thing left. I'm like, that was a lot of dedication, kid.
Right. Now, and there is that part, is it that they didn't like those certain vegetables, and there's other ways, like my dad at one point, he had me out in the garden, we're picking peas and we're, eating some of the peas, out of the pod. And he's like, I noticed that you can eat them this way. And I'm like, oh, he's collecting information. All right, well, let's give him the information. I'm like, barely. And he's like, well, what do you mean? The pea taste, when it's cooked, is enhanced. There's something different about it having it more in the raw form. It's more subtle. And there's other parts, the crunch, the taste isn't as big. And so it's actually somewhat more enjoyable like this. But I can't do very many, because then that pea taste lingers, and that's the part that makes me sick.
Yeah, peas are my Lima beans, but I've never tried them like that.
And I'm not suggesting you should. When I get to that part, people are like, oh, what should I do with this? I'm like, have a tomahawk steak and forget you ever had peas,
Yeah.
Don't try to force what you don't like. I had a couple that came in one time, and they were kind of, the wife was kind of giddy, and I'm like, okay, I think I'm reading this that they've had something, probably a mealtime thing, and it went better for the wife than it did for the husband. And because he's not quite looking green, but he's not looking happy. And I'm like, and they're like, well, we started a new diet. And I'm like, okay, this is dead on. I'm like, oh, okay. So you started a new diet and you're both doing it, as a couple. And they said, yes. And I'm like, let me guess. Tonight's dinner was fish. and the wife goes, yeah, salmon. And I'm like, and you, sir, don't like salmon. And he goes, I hate salmon. But I ate it anyway. I muscled through it. And I got it all down, and she's laughing, and and I'm like, oh, okay. Well, that had to have been pretty incredible and pretty hard all at the same time. Can I give you a prediction as to how long you'll be in this diet?
If it includes a lot of salmon, not long.
Yeah, and they're like, well, we plan to be on it for like a while. I'm like, yeah, 2 weeks, if that. And they both look at me, and they're like, what? And I'm like, he doesn't like salmon. And so this whole muscling thing that just happened, where he's just about looking, yes, you're only going to be able to do this so long. And because you love him, you're going to have empathy for that. And so you're just going to be like, we don't need to do this anymore. And they're like, yeah, but every diet's like that. I'm like, okay. So what I hear you saying is every human being has different likes and different dislikes. Is there a fish, sir, that you like? He goes, I love halibut. Then why not have halibut while she has salmon? Well, that would be two different things to cook. Well, you're cooking two pieces of fish at the same time, even if it's one type. Why not just switch in a different type? Because now you'll eat it and you'll both enjoy it, right? Now, if you translate this down to kids, I'm not saying that you should make what every kid likes every single meal.
Yeah, no.
Do not hear that. My parents made the menu, and we as kids got to put in a couple of things in the month's menu that we liked, but the menu revolved around my parents. They, out of respect for the fact that I did not like liver and onions, would only put it in there once every other month. But they loved it, and so maybe it was twice in that every other month. And they liked the squash, and so they would put things that they really enjoyed in there, and I had to be able to muscle around those dinners.
Occasionally. And
that's a key thing. But what my mom would do is add the sides in that she knew I loved. So I could have a little bit of those things, because they really did want me to have the liver for the iron factor, and there was another piece at the time. And so they wouldn't give me a big piece. They'd give me a smaller piece. and then I had more sides. And, so it's working with the differences, that are there. My wife wanted to try brown rice one time. She's like, let's just try it. I'm like, oh gosh, brown rice. I've never tried this before. It just doesn't sound like it will be appealing. I don't know why. I have no data, no experience to go by, nothing. And she goes, well, let's just try it. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to try it. So she made brown rice, and I tried it, and we got through dinner, and she looked at me and she said, what do you think about brown rice? And I said, honestly. And she goes, you didn't like it? Honestly, I don't think there's enough soy sauce in this world to get me to be able to like brown rice. And she's like, yeah, I noticed you had a lot of soy sauce. I'm like, I had to have a lot of soy sauce. And I mean, honestly, I don't even know. I just know for me, there's a distinct difference in the taste. And she goes, well, I guess you're just going to have to get used to that. No. No. When I said there's not enough soy sauce in this world, right. and technically there really is, but I'm not eating it. And she goes, well, I want to switch to brown rice. So what are we going to do? Well, it's simple. The same thing I was suggesting for them. You get brown rice, and our son, he liked the brown rice. You guys get the brown rice. I'll make white rice. Well, that's twice the food and going to be twice the waste. It's not wasted if you eat it. And she's like, yeah, but that's dumb. I'm like, no, it's not.
But that's dumb.
No, it's called coming to a compromise. I'm not going to stop you from having brown rice that you are really liking. And I'm not going to stop myself from having the white rice that I'm really liking, because the only alternative is I don't eat those meals.
Right.
So as I'm thinking of just brainstorming ways to deal with kids, right? I can envision a circumstance where you have an older child who, I don't know, we'll say they're 13 or older, and there's something they want to eat and they're willing to make it. I can envision a circumstance in which you let them.
Yep.
Right? Is that true for all children, all families, all the time? No. But it's an option.
It's an alternative.
I like throwing ideas at the wall. Sometimes they might stick. Because what you said in that scenario is, I'll make it.
Yep.
And I think there's a kid where it's like, or if they help make dinner, maybe if they help make dinner, they get more input into the menu, right?
Exactly.
I think probably there's probably a good principle with picky eaters of getting them more involved in the food. But I think that's probably a good principle that applies to a lot of things, is get them involved.
As we're talking about pickiness of eating, I'm also wondering, because we know when a baby is born, the eyes are still continuing to form after birth.
Sure.
And there are things they need in the air, I'm assuming, because I don't have the exact science, medical knowledge, down. What if that's happening with our taste buds too? I'm just totally shooting from the hip.
We've all said there were things I didn't like as a kid.
Right.
And I absolutely know that's true.
And so it's another part with the human being growing that if we just make it about their pickiness, and we don't know when those taste buds completely stop growing or if they ever stop growing.
Right. Or developing and changing.
And developing and changing.
They just grew. That'd be weird. Your mouth would be full of taste buds. Anyway.
And and what I'm wondering is if, kind of like I had said with the rice, I'll make it. I didn't say, no, you have to make, brown and white rice, because that's not fair in that regard. I'm not saying, well, no, we can't have brown rice because I don't like it. There are several things that we have in our house that I'm like, they like cooked carrots. They like the mixed vegetables. I'm like, you guys have fun with that. I don't mind. You just do whatever. No problem. And there's things I like that, my wife is not crazy about. She is not a sauerkraut person, even though she has German roots. Sauerkraut is not one that came up through those roots. And so being able to then, help your kid to be more independent and, okay, if you want this, in fact, that I had a family that, when one of the boys was a teenager, he did not think mom, he had a bit of Asperger's, cooked things in the exact order for the exact times they needed to be cooked. Mom is a good cook and a good baker. And she went, you know what, dude?
Get your butt in here.
You get to cook your own meals if you think I don't cook it well enough. And he was like, thank you. And he took to that. And the thing is, she said, listen, but you don't get to leave me a dirty kitchen to clean up after you. And that's where I think a lot of parents, are like, hey, no, wait, I don't want to have them cook because now that's all the more I clean the kitchen. Then they go in there. Now it's just all dirty again. I'm like, no. Who's to say that you have to do that?
Yeah.
If they want to take on that part, then they have to see it all the way through.
Or again, we're throwing ideas at the wall. If the kid's like, I can cook this better, you'd be like, okay, we'll just cook it enough for everybody.
Yep.
And then they make dinner, and then you clean up.
Yeah.
Yep.
But they made dinner.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know.
Yep. My son has a Frito pie he likes to do. I don't know why they call it a Frito pie. Fritos are on top of it.
Yeah,
but it's not the main ingredients. It's a mixture. It's a bean dish, that has a mixture of different types of beans and things. And I can handle that. There's enough tastes and things that get me through that. And he cooks up for the whole family.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. Well, let us know what you do in your house, because we obviously sounds like we have a lot of different strategies and things that we've done, and our tastes are all different. And I will find some lima bean recipes along with Lucas, and we'll surprise you one day.
Indy, you're going to be trying a lot of lima beans.
Hope Indy likes lima beans.
Look at that. He's hungry.
Yep, he is. So, all right. Well, let us know in the comments anything that you've tried with your kids and what you think of some of these suggestions, and we'll see you on the next episode.